Welcome, everyone. Today we are focusing on one of the most important and often overlooked questions in special education. How do we design individualized education programs that honor, sustain, and leverage the full linguistic and communicative repertoires of multilingual, multimodal learners with disabilities? IEP. We use this acronym often in the field of special education. What does the acronym IEP stand for? Well, the I is individualized, the E, education, and the P sometimes refers to a written document, the individualized education plan. The plan reflects the services that comprise the student's individualized education program. So the acronym can refer either to an individualized education plan or individualized education program. To develop an IEP, a multidisciplinary team collaborates by following a 5-step cyclical process depicted in the schematic on this slide. The process begins with team input to determine who the student is as a learner and community member. The common vision contributes to the development of a positive student profile in which information is shared to express the student's areas of strength and need. Based on data collected through a variety of methods, records, review, interview, observation, and testing, the team summarizes present levels of academic achievement and functional performance. This summary is referred to with the acronym PLAAFP or PLAFP. Data from the PLAFP is aligned with skill sets contained within general curriculum to inform the development of meaningful, measurable, ambitious, and achievable annual goals. In addition, the team designates services, supports, and supplementary aids that are needed to implement the individualized education program goals. One of the most important steps in the process is to implement the IEP and monitor the student's progress toward IEP goal attainment. Data on the student's progress then is used to refine and further develop the vision or desired outcome for the student. In this presentation, we'll apply the 5-step IEP process to Maria's case. This process is underpinned by 3 core beliefs. 1, high expectations. Goals are ambitious and achievable, aligned with grade level standards. This is true even for students on an alternate curriculum. 2, collective responsibility. IEPs are written collaboratively as a team. 3, cultural and linguistic responsivity. Students' unique cultural and linguistic assets can be honored and affirmed in the IEP process. Maria is a 4th grade female student who uses she/her pronouns. She received special education services from a cross-categorical special education teacher in a resource room setting. Cross-categorical is the type of license that you will attain in this program. Cross-categorical licensure allows you to serve the needs of students across a variety of disability eligibility categories. Maria also receives language assistance from a Spanish-English bilingual teacher in a TBE, Transitional Bilingual Education Program, more colloquially known as an early exit program. For the content of this presentation, I'll share information about Maria's program as documented on one format of an individualized education plan. Different states and school districts use different forms and documents, but all IEPs used in U.S. public schools convey the same information in roughly the same order. So focus on the content rather than navigating page by page of the document. The beginning sections of the IEP document give a basic overview of the student information system data: name, date of birth, grade, ID, parent name, contact information, and district/service placement. Note that there might be a discrepancy between the home district and the current district of placement, particularly in cases where the student receives transportation to another location to receive services not available in the home district. The beginning of the IEP document also contains information to catalog the purpose of the meeting. A reevaluation needs to be conducted at minimum once per 3 years or triennial. So generally, you'll check one or the other of the boxes under evaluation and reevaluation, but it may be the case that neither is checked. For example, IEP meetings can be held to make revisions that do not directly involve an initial or reevaluation. The purpose of the meeting for Maria is an initial evaluation and IEP development where placement decisions will be made. After noting the purpose of the IEP meeting, we note the type of assessment data used to inform the meeting. Eligibility data, statewide assessment data, and district-wide assessment data. If yes is checked, this indicates that the student participates in the general education curriculum. If NA is checked, this indicates that the student uses alternate curriculum aligned to extended or alternate standards. Those extended and alternate standards also run parallel to the general curriculum standards. Next, we record who attended and participated in the meeting. This is an attendance log only, and it is not an indicator of agreement with the contents of the IEP. Certain IEP team members are required to be present, especially parents, guardians. If the parents and guardians do not attend the meeting, at least 3 different efforts, like phone call to gain information, mail and face-to-face invites, attempts to reschedule the meeting to involve the parents and guardians should be documented. At Maria's meeting, the team will review information from assessments that are linked to the general education curriculum. Some mandatory members of the IEP team meeting include parents, the grade 4 general education classroom teacher, the bilingual education teacher. Bilingual educators are also general educators, by the way, special education teacher, local education agency representative, which is somebody who has authority to make commitments to any financial decisions or obligations raised during the meeting, the school principal, the reading specialist, the school psychologist, and an interpreter because the parents requested a Spanish-English interpreter. Information about the student, including strengths, effects of the disability, special factors, present levels of academic achievement and functional performance, and any concerns must be considered when identifying the student's disability-related needs and developing goals and services to address those needs. Include strategies that have been effective in improving the student's academic achievement and functional performance and increasing their access to general education. Parents are important members of the IEP team and are encouraged to share student information. Pausing so that you can read along on the slide that says Maria is an active and valuable member of her 3rd grade class. She easily follows the daily routine without needing reminders about expected behavior for safe, quiet transitions. She reports that she enjoys working in small cooperative groups because she can help her classmates with staying organized and thinking about hard questions. At home, helping others and giving verbal praise are forms of positive social interaction. Science is Maria's favorite class, according to her self-report. One of the reasons she offered to explain why she likes science is because all students work together in small groups every day. She also shared that she likes studying mealworms and added that she is interested in learning more about different kinds of insects. Maria uses English and Spanish at home. She primarily uses English to interact with siblings and cousins. Her emergent bilingual status is a strength because she can use both languages to interact with peers and to read and write about content at school. On her most recent access test, her English proficiency level was at the developing stage. During whole group instruction, Maria uses visual cues to process questions. When given wait time, she will verbally offer thoughtful responses to open-ended questions during social studies and science classes. Academic achievement generally refers to a student's performance in academic content areas like reading, math, written language. For preschool children, academic achievement generally refers to knowledge and skills such as early language development, communication, early literacy, cognition, and general knowledge. Academic achievement statements must include information about student achievement and/or progress compared to grade level expectations. Sources of the information may include state, district-wide, or classroom assessments, rubrics, screeners, recent evaluations, etc. Describe the student's present level of academic achievement, including reading achievement. In reading, Maria decodes and reads aloud consonant vowel consonant words with 96% accuracy in English and Spanish. Most of her miscues on reading CVC words in isolation or in connected text can be attributed to phonological differences between English and Spanish. I gave her a running record in English, which is a standardized informal assessment of reading accuracy, fluency, prosody, as well as comprehension this past January. And now she is reading at a level I. The average third grade student within the middle of this year should be reading at a level P when we think of the A to Z continuum. Maria showed satisfactory comprehension for text written at a level I and scored an accuracy rate of 97%, showing that this level text is not too easy, but also not too frustrating for her to read. On average, Maria can name one key idea or detail within a text, often relying on cues from the title or pictures. She answers 2 out of 5 literal comprehension questions accurately. Those are like who, what, where, when questions. And 1 out of 5 implicit comprehension questions. Those are often why and how questions. On Maria's fall MAP assessment, a standardized computer adaptive assessment that evaluates reading skills in English, she scored an overall RIT score of 150, which is at the first percentile. For Maria, in the area of literary text, key ideas, and details, she scored in the below average range. For literary text in the area of language craft and structure, she scored in the below average range. For informational text, she scored in the below average range. And for vocabulary acquisition and use, she scored in the below average range. On oral reading curriculum-based measures, where she reads aloud for a minute from a leveled passage, she averages about 24 words correct per minute. The average 4th grade reader averages about 120 words correct per minute. Maria seldom pauses at periods, and she reads in 1-word or 2-word phrases instead of using pausing or phrasing fluently. She does add emotion or inflection when there is an exclamation point in 5 out of 10 observations, and when there's a question mark in 4 out of 10 observations. Areas for her to work on in her reading are self-monitoring, answering explicit and implicit questions about the text, summarizing text in sequential order, using the text to support answers and make predictions, increasing her reading fluency and prosody, and working on reading and decoding new multisyllabic words. In writing, Maria sustains focus to write 2 to 3 ideas about the same topic using words spelled phonetically based on her speech sounds, composing 18 to 20 words per 3-minute extended writing task. By using a peer revision process and a Google Chromebook with Read and Write for Google added as an extension, which is a predictive text to speech, speech to text form of assistive technology, she adds 1 to 2 details to her writing and corrects misspelled words. Maria's handwriting is legible to her. She rereads her writing aloud but makes 0 revisions to correct misspellings or add supporting details when handwriting. She needs 1 prompt per session to remind her to use spaces between words. I gave her the primary spelling inventory PSI from Words Their Way, an assessment designed for kindergarten through 3rd graders on spelling words that progress in difficulty and assess their knowledge of morphology or the meaningful units behind each word and elicit a stage of word pattern development. This assessment allowed me to show Maria's knowledge of spelling and using phonics patterns. Her scores were as follows: words spelled correctly, 8 out of 26. Feature points, 36 out of 56. Her spelling stage is at the early stage of a transitional writer. Same age peers are expected to be in the intermediate stage and working on early syllables and affixes. Maria's about 2 stages behind her peers in working on words within word patterns. She shows skills in initial and final consonant sounds, short vowel sounds, digraphs, blend sounds. She's at 6 out of 7. Blends are like the letters S, T, making a blend in the word stop. Common long vowels, which are when the vowels say their name, like in cake, long A sound. Other vowel patterns, like the oi sound in boy. Inflected endings, like saying walked, the ed ending is inflected there. These are all still things that she needs to work on. Many of her writing samples reflect typical phonological errors in second language learners. Other areas for her to work on in her writing include organizing the content or ideas that she generates before writing, developing a paragraph structure that includes an introduction and conclusion sentences, and revising for the conventions of grammar, sentence structure, punctuation, and capitalization. In the area of mathematics, Maria adds and subtracts within 100 with 98% accuracy. She reads and writes numbers to 1,000 in English and Spanish. She requires extended wait time and use of virtual or actual manipulatives to solve basic word problems. Maria is building her academic vocabulary in mathematics by working collaboratively with peers to use math terminology like parallelogram, repeated addition. She refers to a personal word wall that she keeps in a file folder. In the file folder, she also keeps completed Freyer model graphic organizers that tell the word, a student-friendly definition, an example, a non-example, and a visual representation of the word. In district-wide standardized assessments, she earned a RIT score of 176, which fell at the 6th percentile, meaning she scored as well as 6% of same-age test takers or below grade level expectations. She shows relative strengths in number sense and geometric concepts, but is below average in algebraic methods. Functional performance includes activities and non-academic skills needed for independence, access to instruction, and performance at school, in the home, in the community, for leisure time, and for post-secondary and lifelong learning, including reading. Some examples include activities of daily living, school, work, play habits, health enhancing physical activity, and social emotional functioning. Planning and organization. Maria shows pride in keeping her desk and materials organized. She uses a color coding system and has fewer than 2 missing assignments in the first quarter. Social, emotional, behavioral. Maria stays on task for 9 minutes within a 15-minute interval. Sampling is compared to her classroom peers who are on task for an average of 11 minutes. During these seemingly off-task times, Maria engages in personal thought or on-topic peer interaction. This process is situated within Maria's cultural background, where she is taught to be thorough in her work, discuss ideas with others, and help others complete their work. So what looks like off-task behavior is actually her way of accessing and engaging with the content aligned with her cultural values. Adaptive behavior. Maria follows the daily routine independently, making easy transitions from one activity to the next. About 3 times per week, she refers to the visual schedule posted at the front of the classroom to remind her what is coming up next. Maria attempts to self-initiate tasks and will often look to peers to ask for their assistance if she needs help before she approaches a teacher or adult for help. Special factors must be considered when developing the individualized education program. Consider the special factors when identifying the effects of a disability, summarizing disability-related needs, developing goals, and determining services in the program summary. For example, if a student's behavior impedes learning or that of others, describe the student's behavioral needs. The behavioral needs of the student may be determined through a functional behavioral assessment. Consider those behavioral needs when determining the effects of the disability, the student's disability-related needs, and when developing IEP goals. Positive behavioral interventions, strategies, or supports must be included as specially designed instruction, related services, supplementary aids and services, and/or program modifications and supports in the program summary. For Maria, her behavior does not impede the learning of others. She is classified as an English learner. Her use of English falls at the developing level on the access test, with her scores on speaking and listening exceeding her scores on reading and writing subtests, an expected profile in second language development. Testing records from the bilingual psychoeducational assessment indicate difficulties with reading comprehension, reading fluency, and written expression in both English and Spanish. Given that Maria's instruction is provided in English, her current level of English proficiency affects her use of language to read, write, listen, and speak during academic instruction across the content areas. Maria does not have communication needs that impede learning. She does need and use assistive technology, which we are legally obligated to consider for all students during the IEP process. Maria uses assistive technology to support reading and writing. The low-tech supports that she uses include graphic organizers, highlighter strips, and sticky notes. The high-tech supports include text-to-speech and speech-to-text software with word prediction, spelling grammar check. She also uses Spanish-English online dictionaries. Maria's parents expressed concerns about her progress in reading and writing. They report that she has difficulties remembering what she reads, whether she's reading them in books in English or Spanish. They note that this has led to Maria appearing ashamed and frustrated in trying to avoid reading at home. Parents also expressed that they would like for her to also work on reading and writing in Spanish so that she can communicate by writing letters to extended family members. Maria's parents would like to see her get more support in reading and writing and also spend time receiving instruction in Spanish for at least some portion of the day or week. Note, that what we record in the concerns of the family section should reflect the concerns and wishes of the parent. Documentation shows that the parent or guardian's voices and preferences are recorded. This documentation does not guarantee that preferences will be met. The IEP document thus far reflects step 1, documenting the IEP team's understanding of the student's current levels of academic achievement and functional performance reported during step 1. This step provides IEP teams with quantitative information about the student's skills and behavior at the time, or the what, that is the basis for discussion in step 2. During step 2, the IEP team reflects on the current level and special factor information, if any, and identifies how the disability affects the student's access, engagement, and progress based on observations, analysis of root causes of these effects, such as why the student has difficulty meeting standards and expectations. And finally, synthesizes this information into summary statements, clearly describing the student's disability-related needs. The student's disability-related needs represent the areas or skills that should be addressed to address the effects of the disability and improve the student's access, engagement, and progress in the general education curriculum, instruction, activities, and environments. In step 2, we observe effects of the disability. The team describes how the student's disability affects access, engagement, and progress in the early childhood or grade level standards based on the curriculum, instruction, and environments by sharing observations to answer the question, in what ways do the characteristics or nature of the student's disability affect the student's ability to meet early childhood or grade level academic standards and functional expectations? Begin by reviewing what is understood about the student's current levels of academic achievement and functional performance from step 1. Also review any special factors that may affect access, engagement, and progress, such as, does the student's behavior impede learning? Does the student have communication needs? Is the student an English language learner? Effects of the disability identify how the student's disability affects academic achievement and functional performance. These effects are what the IEP team observes when the student has difficulty accessing, engaging, and making progress in the general education curriculum, instruction, and environments. This item must be addressed for all students regardless of the areas of impairment, including students identified as speech language only. Let's try walking through this first part of step 2, identifying the effects of the disability. Remember, the effect of the disability is the nature, characteristics, or result of the disability. The effects of the disability is what is observed. Here's an example of what an effect of a disability might look like based on some of the selected current level of performance information. Keep in mind that we have excerpted these data pieces from the current level section on the IEP. In the actual document, we would see more explanation of what the data means so that the parents and other team members can better understand and interpret the data. In this example, the student's disability is affecting the student's ability to read grade level material and complete assignments when reading is involved. Data report what is occurring. Reading fluency at 24 words correct per minute, but the benchmark is 120 words correct per minute. Running record shows that the independent level is reading text written at the A to Z level I with decoding and fluency miscues. The student comprehends grade level text when using a text reader and accessing picture supports listening comprehension. And the student excels in hands-on class activities, computer class, science lab, and specials. Relatedly, we document how this affects performance and achievement. The student does not read or comprehend grade level materials independently, does not read with sufficient speed, accuracy, and expression. The student has difficulty completing assignments that involve reading in school and when doing homework. The IEP team then plays the role of a detective or analyst during root cause analysis. The IEP team analyzes why the student is likely having difficulty accessing, engaging in, or making progress in the general education curriculum, instruction, or environment. To conduct a root cause analysis, select one area of concern to address. This is one of the effects of the disability you just identified. Check for consensus that this is an area of concern. Ask the first question, why? Does this happen? Why is the student experiencing this struggle? As you have the why discussion, it may be helpful to revisit data observations that illustrate the concern. Generate possible reasons. Continue to ask the second why, and so on. Ask why about areas or environments in which the student is more successful. This will help you dig deeper into the cause. For example, why is this less of a problem in some classes or environments? What seems to improve access, engagement, or progress related to this skill or concern? This is important because there may be student skills or responses to the specific instructional strategies and supports that can be capitalized upon and transferred to other subjects or environments. In our example, are there any circumstances when the student does not struggle with independent reading? It is important to follow a why string, ultimately asking why up to 5 times, all the way to its conclusion to identify the root cause. During the why discussion, IEP team members may suggest what seems unrelated to the area of concern being discussed. If this happens, jot those ideas down. They might provide a branch to 2 or more root causes of related effects. However, to refine root causes, it's important to dig deeper into one effect and reason at a time. A facilitator should help keep the IEP team on track to drill down into a root cause, because then they can come back to possible branching ideas and conduct other root cause analyses later. Always revisit and consider information you have already reviewed from the current level, special factors, and discussion of context when analyzing the root cause. Sometimes the discussion about root cause may lead to a need for additional information in the current level before you can identify the root cause. That is okay. The IEP team should be free to add additional information, edit the information that will be included in the final IEP document. To conduct the root cause analysis of this effect, the team starts by asking, why doesn't the student independently read grade level materials? The first response, because the student gets anxious and has difficulty gaining meaning from grade level written material when reading independently. Why does the student have difficulty gaining meaning from grade level material when reading independently? When the text is read aloud or when using a text reader, the student can access and comprehend. Why? Because their reading fluency is insufficient to efficiently read grade level material on their own. Why? Because of difficulty with decoding, which affects fluency, that makes it hard to read and understand text in English and Spanish. Why? Because of difficulty with phonological skills that affect decoding across languages. During the final part of step 2, the IEP team takes on the role of a synthesizer, not to make music, but to take complex information and distill it down into clear, succinct, actionable thoughts. The disability-related needs are identified as a result of this synthesis. This step helps to build consensus while informing solutions and evolves directly from the root cause analysis. It is the process of root cause analysis that leads to the identification of the disability-related needs. If the disability-related needs are later addressed, then the concerns that were identified should be resolved. To synthesize disability-related needs, review the conclusions from the root cause analysis. Based on those root causes, ask what skill areas need to be addressed so the effects of disability will be addressed, so the student will be better able to meet preschool or grade level content standards and functional expectations. These disability-related need summary statements are then listed on the IEP. These statements serve as the foundation for IEP goal development during the next step. It is recommended that what is listed here drives the IEP goal development and the selection of supplementary aids, services, and also influences the decisions about progress monitoring and progress reporting. So here we have the summary of disability-related needs showing the areas of priority for Maria as reading comprehension, reading fluency, and written expression. These areas can be expanded into statements that further elaborate and summarize the disability-related needs. In this example, the IEP team determined, based on the root cause analysis, that the student needs to improve phonological and decoding skills and develop and use strategies that will allow the student to better access text and reduce frustration. Based on the root cause analysis, the IEP team decided that if the student can develop phonology and decoding skills in English and Spanish, then there's a likelihood that the student's reading fluency and comprehension will improve as well and allow the student to accelerate and make progress toward meeting grade level reading standards. However, because the student's struggle with reading is causing other concerns, the IEP team has decided it's also important for the student to develop and use self-management strategies so that anxiety can be minimized and the student can gain information from text and better access curriculum content and classroom instruction. To summarize, during the synthesis, the IEP team reviews the answers to the 5 whys, the root causes, and summarizes the student's disability-related needs. If these needs are addressed, then the student will be better able to independently access grade level reading materials and gain meaning from the text. The formula for writing the disability-related needs statement is the student needs to develop, improve, or increase X area, skill, or behavior related to the root cause so that the student can Y. And Y is access, engage, or progress within the curriculum setting or environment so that outcomes will improve. For Maria's case, the disability-related needs statement is Maria needs to improve her skills for blending and segmenting multisyllabic words in English and Spanish so that she can fluently read grade-level text. Here's a glimpse of what the disability-related needs page of the IEP form for Maria looks like. We have the statement that shows how she needs to improve her skills for decoding in order to read fluently and ultimately comprehend grade level text in number 2. We also had identified areas, reading comprehension and written expression, that will need to be expanded into their own disability related needs statements. From the statement that we had crafted related to phonological and decoding skills, we'll develop an IEP goal. Every goal must address one disability-related need. A sample of an IEP goal that addresses the disability-related need for Maria. By October of 2022, Maria will make progress toward reading with sufficient fluency and accuracy to support comprehension. That's reading Foundation Standard 5.4 by applying word analysis skills and using appropriate pausing, phrasing, and expression to read aloud 133 words correct per minute while earning a score of 10 or higher on a fluency rubric. So that IEP goal aligns with the grade level standard for 5th grade. She's currently in 4th grade, and the baseline performance level from the data we collected show that when she's reading grade 2 passages, she's using an oral reading rate of 89.5 words correct per minute. On weekly probes with a 250-word grade 4 passage, she's earned an average score of 4 on the fluency rubric. With grade 2 passages, she's earned the average score of 6 on the 16-point rubric. So we want to move from that current baseline level to the level of attainment that will allow her to meet that IEP goal while satisfying the disability-related need, allowing her to make progress, access, and engage with grade level curriculum, in this case, Reading Foundation Standard 5.4. The level of attainment says that by December of 2022, the midpoint of grade 5, so a year out from when this IEP was written, the benchmark remains 133 words correct per minute for grade 5 passages. On weekly oral reading probes, Maria's reading rate will be scored using a 5-point fluency rubric, inclusive of her oral reading rate. The target for Maria is to score 3 or greater in 80% of weekly trials. In Maria's IEP, under the supplementary aids and services, we document the support that Maria needs in order for that goal to be attained and in order for the disability related need to be met. So those are all aligned or linked. If we address the disability related need, we're addressing it through an IEP goal that aligns to that need, and then we're providing supplementary aids and services that can help address that need. Of the information listed here, we provide a description of what the supplementary aid is, a description of the frequency, location, and duration of those supports. For the support of pairing verbal input with visual support, the IEP document notes that the student will receive that support when the teacher is introducing new academic vocabulary in the general education classroom, in the resource room, and in PE and music class. Additional supports include wait time, study guides, modified curriculum, not penalizing for spelling errors, having non-reading tests read aloud, given extended time for writing tasks, and using graphic organizers and think sheets for writing. All of these supports are explained by providing descriptions of the frequency, location, and duration. We never want to use the phrase as needed when we're describing the frequency. We want to give some operational precision so that every member of the IEP team who is obligated to provide that supplementary aid and service knows exactly when, where, how, under what conditions to provide it, and can't hide under the excuse of, oh, I didn't think it was needed, because we're going to spell out exactly when it's needed. The next section for Maria's IEP is to describe the specially designed instruction or special education services that she'll receive. And Maria will receive services for reading instruction and writing instruction, both in the resource room and in the general education setting. Her related services in this case only include assistive technology to facilitate reading and writing skill development. The support that Maria receives from the bilingual teacher is not considered a related service. Bilingual education, or ESL education, falls under the umbrella of general education and therefore wouldn't be listed as a special education related service. Maria on her IEP will participate in the general education environment. She will not participate with her non-disabled peers when she is receiving individualized instruction for reading and written language. So that means she'll be removed from general education peers when, for example, she is receiving instruction in the resource room, when she is having non-reading tests read aloud to her. The explanation here is that she will not participate with her peers in the general education environment when she is receiving intervention directed to meeting her disability-related needs or individualized needs, because special education services require specially designed instruction that is not offered as part of the general education curriculum. In the next brief section, we'll explore a tool that's useful for IEP teams to use to ensure they have made appropriate considerations for multilingual, multimodal, meaning maybe students that are using signed language or alternative augmentative communication devices. This tool comes from the U.S. Department of Education's English Language Toolkit, where Chapter 6 in the Tools and Resources section provides a checklist. So we have framing questions. Has the dominant language in the home been considered? In Maria's case, we had input from the parents about Maria using both English and Spanish at home, talking sometimes with cousins and siblings in English, with other family members in Spanish, reading text in both languages. The psychoeducational evaluation by a bilingual psychologist assessed her performance in both languages in order to look for patterns of consistency across her performance in both languages. Have cultural values and beliefs of the parents been considered in planning for the child's education? We did see evidence of the parents' input being acknowledged in the student concern section of the IEP, and we saw cultural interpretations of Maria's preference for group work and thoughtful questioning, supporting peers when making interpretations of what might otherwise have been called off-task behavior. Does the instructional plan incorporate a variety of instructional strategies? We saw an exhaustive list of supplementary aids and supports. Is there a member of the IEP team who has expertise regarding the student and understands how language develops, as well as strategies that can be used when educating a student with English as a second language? This could be evidenced by the participation of the bilingual education teacher at the IEP team meeting. The state of Illinois offers a bilingual special education approval on an LBS 1 endorsement, or an ESL special education approval on an LBS 1 endorsement. By taking additional 3 courses, you can have that approval added onto your LBS 1 endorsement, and then you can be a member of the IEP team who has this expertise. Does the IEP team have access to assessment data that is accurate and unbiased? Does the assessment information use a variety of methods and environment? The acronym we use for a comprehensive assessment to have a variety of methods is RIOT: records, interview, observation, testing. Does the present level statement in the IEP address both how the student uses his, her, their native language, and how the student uses English, do progress monitoring activities measure progress toward the mastery of English, do goals delineate in which language they will be addressed, and who will be responsible for measuring outcomes? Is there collaboration between the general and special education as well as English as a second language or bilingual educator? Additional questions include, are the IEP team members trained in how to use an interpreter? So we never want a child to act as the interpreter, a sibling to act as the interpreter. We want to be sure that the interpreter is someone who has knowledge of the language in special education, who checks in, asks for repetition. Everyone else participating in the meeting speaks to the family member, parent, caregiver, not to the interpreter. So you're looking and making eye contact, having a conversation with the parent, not with the interpreter. Is the evaluation process that will be used carefully defined in the native language and in English during reviews and reevaluations? Are behaviors that are being measured carefully defined in the native language and in English during reviews and reevaluations? Is the setting that the language is being measured and defined? Is the type of language that is being measured defined? Type of language meaning academic language versus basic interpersonal communication, receptive versus expressive language. A couple points regarding the use of interpreters and translators will help us wrap up this presentation. What is the difference between an interpreter and a translator? Neither translation nor interpretation should imply a word-for-word equivalence. The reality is that word-for-word translation can often lead to an incorrect message. The art of translating or interpreting correctly involves accurate conversion of a message from the point of view of both its content, its style, register, dialect, specialization, and cultural concepts. With this in mind, it must be noted that interpreters and translators must have the appropriate training and educational background to perform such sophisticated, complex tasks. An interpreter must receive training in interpreting techniques as well as background materials specific to the field for which they're interpreting. A translator, on the other hand, requires a much more specialized skill set for the written transfer of message from one language to another. So the interpreter is interpreting through speaking and listening. The translator is translating through reading and writing. Because of this, written translation requires deep knowledge of grammatical context, clear familiarity with idiomatic expressions, syntax, grammar, technical and colloquial terms, as well as cultural concepts. This is why individuals who learned their parents' or grandparents' native language at home without any formal training are usually unsuccessful in providing a quality translated IEP document. Often parents as well as school personnel assume that after a year or two in the school system, children can manage their way around in English and use the students to interpret without realizing the harmful effects this can have on the child. Beyond the issue of English language proficiency, children, whether they're 5 or 15, are limited in either language by the nature of their age and experience. In addition, particularly in the context of asking them to translate or interpret during an IEP meeting, in addition, it places the child in the role of being responsible and capable of transmitting conversation that should be solely between adults. Here are some recommendations for working with interpreters and translators. Allow time for a pre-encounter session so that the interpreter can be informed about test procedures, details related to the student's background, and review of material. Arrange for the interpreter to receive training in the terminology, procedures, rationale of the evaluation process, and assessment instruments. Throughout the interpretation process, speak in short, simple sentences, avoid idioms, metaphors, colloquialisms, use specific terms and avoid jargon, and allow the interpreter time to interpret all messages. Conduct frequent check-ins to ensure the student or parent understands, and supervise interpreter activity.